I think it's starting. I started it. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, then fine.
It's starting recording. I think it started already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so, so SQL Server is an RDBMS. RDBMS means Relational Database Management System. Okay. So let me open it. Okay. SQL Server is an RDBMS. Okay. So it's like so RDBMS means like Relational Database Management System. So it's a database management system where the objects are relational. So it's also called as ORDBMS. O means object. That's the only addition there. So RDBMS or ORDBMS. RDBMS or ORDBMS. O means object. Object means the tables. Okay.
Okay.
So, so the thing is, in SQL Server or like any SQL, I mean SQL related databases like a SQL Server, Oracle, so their objects are related. So you can make relations between two objects. So in a column in one object can be related with another column. Okay, there can be a primary key here, and that can be a foreign key here. Okay, I'll tell you about keys. You guys know, but we'll discuss about that as well. Okay, so to run this SQL Server application, we need a platform. Okay, it's a platform dependent. So that is it's called. Of course, it runs on Windows and also Linux. From 2017 version, they released on Linux. But yeah, mostly we'll run this on Microsoft, right? Windows. So SQL is the language, SQL. So we call that SQL. That's how you say that. So that's a language you use to read the database or the data in this database. So it's we can also use through a command prompt or command based. This is a command based software as well as GUI means the one we connect to Management Studio and we see right what's happening there, what's in there and all. So it's a GUI which is graphical user interface as well as command prompt. Like we can use the command prompt and pass commands and get the data as well. So we can use in both ways, but this is more popular because user friendly. We see what we are doing and all, so this is more friendly, and so most of the people uses this. We use this in some cases, like some kind of applications. The application owners they give us the commands to run and to run through command prompt in batch files. So they make a batch file and they'll give a link to that. And actually, they give a location of the batch file and they ask us to execute that. They'll prepare a .exe file there as a batch file and they ask us to execute that .exe file through command prompt. So at that time, this is useful, but mostly people will give us the queries or they go through the pipelines like the VSTS, Visual Studio. Uh, so we use GUI, which is graphical user interface, where we can see that so we can connect to the server and we can see the databases and objects and columns and everything. So SQL Server mainly have uh, three services. I think three services. Like, it's database services, and reporting services, and analysis services. Okay? Analysis. So they're called in short form actually. This is called SSRS. This is called SSAS. Oh, there's one more actually. Integration services. integration. It's called SSIS. Okay, SQL Server Integration Service. SQL Server and Analytical Service or Analysis Service. Or SSRS. SQL Server Reporting Service. Okay, and database service is the most common thing we use, where we store our database and we access that through SQL Server Management Studio, right? So Management Studio is the tool. That's a tool actually. Okay, you know management tool how it looks like. Right? So that's a tool. We connect to server. We can see all the databases, and we write the queries in the query window. We get the results here. Yeah. Um, so we have different SQL versions, right? So right now it's SQL 2019 is the latest version, but people still use 2012. Some people 2000 R2. 2000 R2 was most popular, like a lot of people were using it. But slowly earlier they used to release like once in a while. They didn't have any particular dates, but I think since 2012 they thought they were like promising everyone to release a new version every 2 years. So since 2012, you see 2012, 2014, 16, and then they got 17 for Linux, uh, and they got 16. Yeah, they got 16 as well, and they got 19, not 2018, but 19. So let's see the versions once again. Let me Google that. There's a there's a site where it's a private site. Okay. So 2002 not yet released. Okay, it's announced. So you see the releases 6, 6.5, 7, 2000, 2008, 8R2, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19, 22. So these are the release dates and release the build numbers and the service packs. So for now it is RTM. RTM available. Yeah, RTM means release to. I think release to maintain. No, something I forgot.
What are we using, Raj? Is it 2019?
We are in some servers we are using 2019, but most of them we are using 2016. So
Okay.
any people which we are building now is 2019. So the existing are 2016. So all our
Okay.
processors mostly 2016, but the new processors like FNSV, data acquisition, they are 2019. So we are trying to migrate to 2019, but there's some work left for it to win. I mean, we can't just switch it. Though we switch it, we can switch it. But though we switch it, the new features, whatever they're offering, we can't use it unless we change the backend code or our store procs, which are some deprecated features. We have to let them go and modify them. So
For that only we have developed a report, right?
yes, yes,
We worked
yes.
on a report, BP check findings.
Yes, BP check. Yeah. So that's one of it. And we developed another report last year um, that was like that was built from the migration tool itself. So it showed us for every database, every object, what um, I think every object as well. Yeah, which column or which kind of things are like deprecated and which need to be addressed before we move to 2019 and can use 2019 features. So yeah, we need to start working on that. We're working. So those are the versions. Um, so the next thing would be SQL Server components. Okay, so for SQL Server there are like two types of components. Um, where is this? So two types of components. It is workstation related. That means we can it's like tools. We connect to that and we walk through that. That's those are like called workstation related. I wish I can write with the finger. workstation. And the other one is server components. Okay. So those are called like the one which I showed, the integration service or analysis service, or reporting service, or we have another service called SQL browser, but we actually disable it. It's like not recommended to use from our FNF policies. What else we have? Yeah, SQL Server agent that helps us to run the jobs. That we enable the agent and SQL Server, right? They're like I'll show the services of SQL Server. So these all comes under server components. Server components, okay. And the tools means like SSMS, which I spoke about. There is another tool called BIDS, Business Intelligence Development Studio. So that was like replaced by Power BI. It's not replaced, but it's a good alternative is Power BI, which we use. So we don't use BIDS and build reports and publish in reporting server. No, we don't do that. We use Power BI. That's way better. And there's another called Profiler, SQL Server Profiler. So that helps in. So this is a tool. So do you heard about tracing? Did you ever heard about tracing? So tracing means like we'll like scan every session or every um, SQL statement or small anything running on SQL Server. We'll like record it. We'll record it and keep it. So that's called tracing. So that we don't do all the time. So when we see like any issues with our SQL Server, like if SQL Server is making high CPU and we don't know what the cause, we have like multiple diagnosing queries, but still if we don't find from there, if we don't know the cause of this kind of the CPU like hitting 90 to 100%, which is bad, right? So we enable the tracing using SQL Profiler and we record all the data for a while, maybe like an hour or two, when we'll observe the trend of this CPU trend. Like if you think it's occurring like every noon, every weekday noon, then maybe we turn on the tracing for that window and capture all the information that we can call them logs, but there are the actual SQL procedures or SQL statements, whatever running on SQL Server from application side, from manually, like if any people are running queries, like any DBA running queries or any application running queries or any reporting related queries, anything running on the SQL Server, they can be captured, okay, and they'll be saved in that big, huge log, and that would be a very huge, like usually SQL Server like runs about uh, like depends upon the busyness of the server, but our server like it runs around like 4 to 5,000 uh, batches per second actually. So that's a huge data. We'll be getting huge data. So we'll have multiple columns in that, like CPU or the start time, end time, or the username. So there are like multiple names, multiple column names, which we filter through. Okay, so it's not easy to filter and work with it because of the huge file, but that's the reason we capture only for a small amount of time, like 1 to 2 hours at max. If you run for like a whole day, that's insane to open even. So that's where the SQL profiler is being used. And what else we have in that? Yeah, these are the mostly thing we use. We use SQL SSMS Management Studio, where we connect to the server and see all the database and all. Let me open. Then this is the Management Studio, right? These are servers and these are query windows we open and we write. Okay, so what else we can cover today? So there are multiple relational database management systems like Oracle and all, Teradata, Oracle. But why we use SQL Server? Because it is less cost. Okay, and any like Teradata and all, Oracle, Teradata, they can honor like big applications, the huge applications, but small applications with like few terabytes of data, SQL Server can handle. Our we have Edge, right? Edge and OCR. The OCR is like 12 terabytes. Still, our SQL Server is doing good, and that it can still. We are actually trying to get the size reduced, but it can still take it, and it can do better with that huge amount of data in it, and it can be maintained by standby servers like so servers can be clustered. SQL servers can be clustered, and or can be standby are the like they stand alone. It's standalone, actually, not standby. They're standalone. Means they can be one server and work alone by themselves, but clustered is what most people prefer, because for the failoring issues, like in case if one goes down, then the whole server, then the whole application will be down. But here you'll have multiple nodes. So if one goes down, the other will come up. Or if this goes down, that will come up. So that's why people prefer clustered. And because it's a Microsoft product, it got some usability with the Windows applications like Failover Cluster Manager, the Windows application where it can be included in that and build the cluster. So yeah, let's talk about the SQL portions. So we saw the versions, right? Now, let's see about the editions. Okay, so SQL Server have editions as well, um, like dev edition, standard, express, the multiple actually. Of course, the actual prod one, which is called enterprise actually. Enterprise. So standard, express, and some other which are like not all features are offered in this one to work with. So for example, it can like in standard in express, if though we have like high CPU, this can utilize it. It will take only one CPU and work on one CPU. It won't take more than one CPU, and can take more than 1 GB of RAM. Though we have like 10 GB of RAM, we can't assign it. It can take only 1 GB of RAM, and database cannot exceed 10 GB of storage space. So in case we have like 11 GB of database, it can be worked on Express. Like it won't grow, won't let it grow because there are restrictions on Express. So we can actually test with the small databases, like easy queries, like what we can do in the training sessions. We can do Express, and we can use Express, and we can learn in that. And actually, Dev is equal to enterprise. So Dev offers almost all what enterprise can offer. And anyway, it's free to install. It is free, and this is cost per. There are multiple ways to cost. Actually, they cost through regular license, and the licensing. Sometimes the licensing will be cost due to the CPU, like CPU cores and all. So it depends upon how they cost it. Dev is free. Oh, excuse me. And they offer almost all features of the enterprise. But only thing is you can't use this for prod. Like you can't use this for real application. You can install in the lower lanes like dev, and you can have users connect to it and practice it and test it. But you can't use this for the fraud. Ethically, it is wrong, and as well, you can't connect like multiple users to the dev. Uh, it is like only one. It is licensed for only for one user. Like not multiple users can connect to dev, but enterprise it is licensed for multiple users. The multiple users can connect to it at the same time and get the data out of it. But dev only one user can connect at one time. So that's a restriction we have on dev. There are multiple. There's still more actually. Like data center where it's a data center edition. Like they're like the memory limitation is like there's no limitation at all on memory. You can have like 12 GB or it depends upon your requirement. That's the data center version. And what else we have? So mostly every version will be released in all the editions. Mostly, I didn't check about the recent versions whether they have the standard and express, but until 2012-14 they were releasing standard, enterprise, and of course enterprise is what they release every time. Standard and express dev for sure they release. They do release for dev and enterprise for every version. Standard and express I'm not sure about 2019, but 2012 2014 they released it. But we don't need that standard and express because we can install dev and we can work on it and we can do that. So mostly people don't install the standard and express unless they're working on their personal laptop with very less RAM and less CPU. Then express would be ideal to install and work on if you're working on your personal laptop. Um, what else we can go? So any questions until now?
No, Raj.
No,
I'm fine.
Raj.
Additions be like it is same concept like Power BI license, right?
Yeah, licensing could be different, right? So in Power BI, yeah, Pro, we have like Pro license or
Premium.
yeah, and Premium. So Premium can be like multiple people can connect, and the storage will be offered by the Power BI by the Microsoft. Pro, we only one user can connect, but the storage is still local. Or we have like limited storage, like how much I forgot, 10 GB I believe. 10 GB is Pro. And Premium, it's
100.
actually it's not recommended to use Premium unless like you really live on reports, right? If your company
Mhm.
is really living on reports, then Premium is good, but Pro is enough
For us.
for all users. Yeah, for users like us, Pro is good enough. Okay. Let's talk about the installation. So let's do the installation tomorrow, but let's talk about it today. Um, so I told you, right? Installations can be standalone, standalone. That's what we actually do in our session, and it can be clustered. Okay, clustered is like multiple standalones. We connect them together, and we make sure that they talk to each other, and we make it as a cluster. So if one goes down, the other comes up. Okay, so that's a feature. That's two features actually. One is from Windows Failover Cluster Manager. So that's Windows offered cluster manager actually. So you can connect the nodes to the payload cluster manager in Windows and let the Windows manage it. Like we have a heartbeat being monitored. It's called quorum. So it's called quorum actually. You quorum. So it looks for quorum. So earlier before Azure, so how we used to install, how we used to configure is like we create multiple individual standalones in multiple servers, but individual servers, and we connect that through one server. It can be one of these servers, or it can be a new entirely new one. So it's always recommended to one of these because of the cost management. Okay, and we used to have a disk on separate server actually. Okay, and if this is one of this server, then we have a disk on separate server, and the quorum is built. Okay, so if it is like 4 node cluster, usually it will be even numbers. Not usually, it can be odd as well. But when we have like one application, it will be on 2 nodes. If we have 2 applications, it will be on 4 nodes. So it depends upon the application busyness or the server busyness. So the quorum, like it reads the live data, like it says like, are you alive? It asks, are you alive on all the servers on the disk as well. So it will read everyone. So so if anyone responds, if anyone doesn't respond, then it will quickly detects the secondary server of that and switch the services to secondary server. So usually we have like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if you think these two are app 1, and these two are app 2. So application 2 is connected to 1 and 2, and these are like redundant to each other. Okay, and this is primary, this is secondary, same as well, primary, secondary. So when it connects to a listener, right? So it's called listener. So because the application doesn't know which server is alive, or which server is working, or which server it has to connect, so there is a listener address. So that's called a cluster. Usually that's a cluster name, or it can be listener name, or it's actually an IP. Okay, it's actually an IP, virtual IP, where it doesn't have a real box for it, but it's an IP. So usually our listener names, our listener names, right? So it's AG. So this is our listener name. AZE2P13 AGH01 is our listener name. But the actual server name is AZE2P13 NT SQL1, SQL2. Those are the actual boxes. Because we don't know to which we connected, I mean to which one is the primary. Here where we can see our availability groups and the listeners. So the replicas. See that one is secondary. So until we see here, we don't know. So even the application doesn't know until it checks here. So we instead of that, we actually create the listeners. Okay. The listeners. Okay, I think these are created in the Windows Scalar Cluster Manager. So we create the listeners there, and we connect through the listener. Okay. This is so the app will check, connect to the listener, and talk to the database. So it doesn't know which one is alive, which one is primary, which one is secondary. So a failover can happen, and this can be switched secondary to primary, primary to secondary, but app still doesn't know. Still, it talks to listener and sends the data, and syncs. So this is called cluster, and this whole thing can be put in one cluster. There can be 2 applications, or it can be another app still, and it can be put in the same cluster. Like 5, 6. It can be primary, secondary. It can be app 3 connecting through a listener. Okay, so still it can put in under one cluster. So that's Windows Scalar Cluster Manager. So the quorum talks to when quorum like asks 1, it asks 2, it asks every node. It asks every node whether they are alive or responding, or the services are running. So in case if one is experiencing some kind of maintenance, maybe Windows update, it has to restart, right? So when it's restart, the services go down, and then quickly switches to the second. The quorum checks 1, it is down, then the quorum switches to the 2, node 2. So this is done by quorum that is maintained by the Windows Payload Cluster Manager. This is one kind of setup. It is handled by the Windows, not the SQL Server, but the Windows. Windows in the in our OS. There is another setup from the SQL Server actually. The SQL Server can also form a cluster, and here the disk. Okay, the differences. I'll tell you the differences. So here the storage disks are independent. Okay, so the one has its own storage disk, the two have its own storage disk where the database are stored. So when a failure happens, it just switches the services quickly and go and just start running. But SQL Server failure cluster, it has like only one disk, so it doesn't have like two disks. There's only one, like disk is also service. Okay, so it sits in between. It sits in between it sits in between and checks like whichever is primary, it will connect to that. So when listener says 1 is primary, the disk will connect to the 1. When listener says 2 is primary, or the quorum actually says quorum says 1 is primary, the disk connects to the 1. And quorum says second is primary, then disk connects to the 2. Okay, any confusion?
No.
No, Raj.
Okay, quorum is the main heartbeat of the payload cluster. So if quorum cannot be down in any time, so quorum is like installed on the separate disk. That's the reason. So when the failure cluster is one of these servers, is installed on one of these servers, the quorum is installed on separate disk. So if this goes down and quorum is living on 02, then doesn't make sense, right? So that's the reason this is installed on separate disk in separate server. Can be a small server, dummy server, doing nothing, or can be doing something. But the quorum sits on that and checks if anyone is alive or not. If anyone is bad, it switches to the second one. So the installation. So that's the cluster work, cluster installation. So we do standalone because we don't have multiple servers to make the cluster. But I'll show you the cluster on enough. So what we need? So we need, of course, we need an installation file. Yesterday night, I think I started the download. I think that's an exe file, a small one. Earlier, it used to be a big files, huge files. Let me open first. Earlier, it used to be like GB files, like huge files to execute and install. But now it is like small files because every system is connected to internet, right? So when we that's my local. So when we are like installing, then it actually connects to the internet and download all the required files and then installs. Let me open. There you go. I downloaded evaluation version and the dev version, but we'll install the dev. Takes only 5 MB, but originally it's not 5 MB. It connects to internet and gets all the files, so still has to do work has to do. So we'll install our SQL Server dev in our this local. Yeah, let's get dev, not an express or standard. We can still assign, though it is dev, we can still assign the number of CPU and memory to it. It doesn't have to be a huge memory or CPU. But in Express, you don't have that leverage to increase. But in dev, we have that leverage to increase or decrease as per our requirement. So let me see how big is this one. CPU is already 100%. I don't know what caused it. We'll check it. So we have 16 GB, so in that we have like almost half available. We can give like around 2 to 4 GB for SQL Server initially. That should be good. Yeah, I think we have 4 process, so that's good for. Um, that's fine. We can give one dedicated to our SQL Server. And it's a disk size. We can have a small disk size because we will not like install a big database like our Edge. We have lot plenty of 30, 37, 56, almost 59 GB here left. So we'll have our databases here. Okay, I'll show you that one as well. This should be good for today. You guys have any doubts today?
No, Raj.
No, Raj, no doubts. It was really helpful.
Thank you, glad. Stopping the recording. Stop. Stop. Okay. It's recording the transcription. Stop recording.